The gaming industry today is a behemoth in terms of generating income. The industry generated approximately $184 billion in 2024, more than twice the revenue of both the music and film industries combined. And with a plethora of genres to choose from, there is something for everyone. It may then come as a surprise that in the not-too-distant past, the industry ground to an uncomfortable halt and almost collapsed completely in the United States. But what caused this sudden massive decline and nearly buried the multi-billion-dollar industry we know today? To answer that question, we need to go back. The late 70s and 80s, considered the golden age of arcade gaming, driven by iconic titles like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, was a time of rapid growth within the gaming industry, technological development and advances in computing technology that had greater power and lower costs. This allowed for more complex games than was previously possible, with the use of RGB color graphics becoming more widespread, meaning more and more arcade games were being produced in color rather than black and white. In 1977, Atari released the Atari VCS, which would later be renamed the Atari 2600, and for the next few years they would become a dominant player in the home console market. And in 1980, the release of the licensed version of Space Invaders on the console solidified its position at the top of the ladder. Atari's success emboldened other companies, and as a result, a multitude of other consoles were introduced to the market, including the ColecoVision, Vectrex, and Intellivision. Each of these consoles had a library of titles produced by the console maker. Prior to 1979, there were no third-party developers for gaming consoles. However, an internal disagreement within Atari led to 4 video game programmers leaving the company and forming Activision. Already being familiar with the Atari VCS system, they then developed their own games, and while Atari did try to sue Activision, this ultimately failed to get the desired outcome, and the case was ultimately settled. Whilst this meant that Activision had to pay Atari royalties, it also legitimized the viability of third-party developers within the industry. This would ultimately become one of the major factors and causes of what we now refer to as the console crash. An oversaturation of poor quality games being produced by companies trying to emulate Activision's success. By 1983, it was estimated that over 100 companies were trying to gain a foothold in the market. If the public liked an idea or format of a game, these companies would try to capitalize on that, leading to numerous clones of otherwise successful titles filling store shelves. With all these new games flooding the market, many stores just didn't have the shelf space to accommodate any new games or consoles. And due to lack of sales, when retailers tried to return these products, the publishers just didn't have the cash to refund the retailers. And just like that, many publishers, including games by Apollo and US Games, disappeared from the market. Many retailers, now unable to return the games, were trying to sell these games off for a fraction of the initial retail price. Atari did try to replicate the success of the licensed Space Invaders game with releases such as Pac-Man. Unfortunately, due to poor sound and visual quality, this struggled to replicate its success in arcades. And E.T., the extraterrestrial, often cited as the cause of Atari's woes in this time period, ultimately coming across as a soulless cash grab. This led to the urban legend that Atari buried many of its unsold cartridges in a landfill. The urban legend, initially suggesting millions of unsold units were buried, was later clarified by former Atari executive James Heller to be closer to 728,000 units, and whilst E.T. was clearly a commercial failure, it was more of a symptom of a wider issue rather than the root cause of all their problems at the time. This new lack of confidence within the gaming market led to many retailers refusing to sell video game consoles and games, or reduce their stock significantly. With those retailers set up to exclusively sell video games closing down altogether, further impacting overall video game sales. It wasn't until 1986 that the industry started to recover, and by this time dominance within the market had shifted to Japanese publishers. With the NES dominating sales in the late 80s, Nintendo controlled the majority of the US console market. The waning interest in consoles also paved the way for the computer game market to gain a foothold within the US with the release of the Commodore 64, a lack of interest in the console market, and Nintendo limiting the number of third-party releases each year on their console. Publishers such as Activision turned their attention to making computer game titles in order to stay viable. While it is unlikely that a crash to the same scale as what occurred in the 1980s will happen in the future, due to how diverse the market is in terms of genre and the type of content available, there is certainly comparisons that can be made and lessons to be learned when it comes to the quality of products being produced by companies both large and small within the gaming industry, as all too often just one poor release can be the downfall of an entire company. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more content like this on the channel, please consider liking, subscribing and sharing the video, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.